Hello.
Hi.
News? Should we switch to news?
Okay. The first piece of news is about this small and rather scruffy-looking object, which is actually an 11th century pen from Ireland with a metal tip at that. If you asked me what people were writing with at that time, I would say quills, styluses, something like that. But in this particular case, it's definitely a pen, a composite pen made of, its tip is made of metal, and the structure, the base is made of bone. And the really interesting thing about it is where it was found. It was found in Cashel. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Cashel is a castle, basically. And Caherconnell is a place in County Clare, so north of Ireland, not Northern Ireland, but north of Ireland. And it is a private home. It was lived by a single family, or at least it looks like that from the archaeological record. There are no documents whatsoever from that era that deep in Ireland. So it was not a religious site. It wasn't a monastery. It wasn't a church. It was a private home. And in 11th century, they had pens. So what were they writing? There are many versions because no private letters from the period survived, nothing like that. Were they writing down accounts? Were they writing letters? Was it some kind of last will and testament of Lord so-and-so? We just don't know. And it is by a few centuries the oldest such object in Ireland or anywhere in the British Isles. You can see what sort of size it is. And at the bottom, you can see a modern recreation. I read a bit about it. It's interesting that the bone that the pen itself is made of was so thoroughly worked that it wasn't possible to identify what it was. And the best option, the best fit identified by a local museum is one of the wing bones of a swan, which is quite impressive. A swan metal pen at a family castle in Ireland. Really impressive object. And you can read quite a lot about it. There was lots of coverage when it was printed in the Archaeology Ireland magazine and all over the net. You can read about the experiments. But I would like to give some context for that. I mean, what did we know about writing implements in Ireland before that? So the very earliest objects relevant to writing in Ireland are the famous Springmount Wax Tablets. They were found somewhere around 1914, so quite a long time ago, and they are the regulars what you find all over the post-Roman world, and in Russia too. We talked about a 10th century book written in this technique, the Novgorod Codex. This particular example, and it's really well preserved. You can see how it was carried around. You can see individual serras, individual tablets. You can see the belt, very well preserved. And you can see the text. It's written on wax, so it was clearly not written with a pen, nor was it written with a quill. It was written with a stylus. So 6th, 7th century Ireland, all the examples we have are this sort of things. But then if we go a bit later on, we find manuscripts like the famous Book of Mulling. And if we zoom in into one of the evangelists, you can see what this very book was written with. And again, it's not a pen. This is 8th century, I think, maybe early 9th century. So a pocket gospel book of the insular tradition, a very typical thing. And it was written with a quill. And you can even see a small ink pot also in his hands. And here I couldn't stop myself and went on a tangent, because this particular book is a very impressive example, not only in terms of its illustrations and in terms of its text. I mean, look at that. Another thing that is interesting about this book in particular is how it was preserved. It was preserved in this. We like to talk about boxes for books.
Yeah, we love to talk about boxes.
Here's a nice example from the 10th century, a golden shrine. There is a whole category of these things. This one comes from the book of Mulling, but there are many examples, and they're called in Irish cumdach, I think, and I just wanted to show you a few examples. They are all early medieval, so like 8th to 11th centuries, and they are very impressive. They are not bindings, they are not book covers, what I'm showing. They are all boxes and things like that. I mean, if I didn't know it was Christian, I would say it was pagan. This looks like Mother Goddess.
It's a stage between the carved books that we can see on some churches and the the book itself, the book with pages. And these sculptures, or parts of the sculpture, that's, by the way, something we wanted to talk about during one of our next live streams, because we started driving around France recently, and I've made some. I've seen some pretty nice religious sculptures with books and with all the different sorts of bindings recently, especially in Metz. There were some quite beautiful examples. Not medieval as far as I understand, but still really nice work.
It's also interesting how these were used. So they were not kept in churches. They were very powerful objects. They were taken to battles. And often people didn't even think about what's inside them. Almost always they were books associated with some saints, but people didn't treat them as books. They treated them as magic objects. So the oldest Irish book in existence was preserved in one of such cumdachs, and it was only discovered inside it in the 19th century. So nobody bothered to open it for over 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So anyway, coming back to the pen, another thing I wanted to tell is just how rare these things are and how we know that they are rare. There is this wonderful website for the portable antiquities scheme. This is not Irish website, it's for England. There are similar websites for Scotland and Wales, but this one is the best in terms of searchability. What it is an organization that you must report all your metal detecting finds to. So if you find a coin that has a cross or is made of gold or is older than 200 years or so, you must report it. And the same for all other objects. And all these objects are photographed. A detailed description is written up, and all that information is easily accessible online. So I went on this website and searched for medieval pens. Well, first of all, there are only 5 examples. And say for coins, there are millions of them. For inkwells, there are hundreds upon hundreds of medieval inkwells. But pens, those are really rare because you mostly find them on church sites, that nobody will allow you to metal detect. So common people didn't have pens, and if they did, they would look something like that. So more of a stylus, or like that. Now this is closer, but this is also much later, a few centuries later. This is a pen tip, a late medieval example. Here's another example, and again we only find the tips, which is another great thing about this. We now know what a whole pen looked like, and we even know what kind of bird it was. And here's another one. I can't imagine how you'd use that as a pen, but if they say it's a pen, it's probably, and this is it. So for all of England, for the last 30 years of manic metal detecting, only 5 examples, and all of them much later.
As usual, many thanks to all of our viewers, and we'd like to say thanks to our patrons on Patreon, and please consider joining the crowd, because money that we get from our patrons is the only source for our podcasts to get the videos edited. Well, not the only source, because if it was the only source, we wouldn't get we would only get half of the videos edited or something like that. We still have to add some money, but still we would like to invite more people to join the crowd, because we have a lot of plans. We would like to spend more time working on the French, Spanish, and now Russian versions of the podcast. And we'll also invite people who are ready to read and check the Spanish, French, and Russian subtitles of the podcast for further translation into English, so that English-speaking members of the English-speaking audience would be able to watch these other language podcast versions of iBookBinding's podcast. So if you are ready to volunteer, it's an unpaid job, it's a volunteer thing, but if you are ready to volunteer, please send us a message or just leave a comment, and we will reach out to you. We've got several answers from people who are ready to work on the Spanish version of the podcast, and I'll be reaching out to them pretty soon, but we still have to find people for the French version. It's a bit easier with Russian for us, with the Russian language, obviously, but yeah, French version still demands some attention. So if you are speaking French, and if you love book arts and book history, and if you're ready to spend some time with reading and correcting the subtitles, please reach out. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Yeah, see you. Yeah.